Well, hello there, once again, my young friends. Mr. Johnson, Westlake High School, classroom 408, coming to you here to deal with some Miller's Tale. So, your assignment for the weekend was to read the first 2 pages of the Miller's Tale so that we can adequately cover it in class that day and not need to read every word of it together. That is a little bit of a task because of the language and whatnot, so I thought maybe I could help you out by providing you with this recording of my reading it to you and even maybe helping you annotate a little bit. It wouldn't hurt if you were to maybe kind of mark some things as you listened to this and read this with me, to where you just kind of know what's going on. And that way, not only are you ready for your simple little reading check quiz on Monday, but you kind of know what's going on in the story. So let's do this. Starts off with the summary of the Miller Tale's prologue before he actually starts to give his story. The pilgrims applaud the knight's tale, and the pleased host asks the monk to match it. Before the monk can utter a word, however, the miller interrupts. Drunk and belligerent, he promises that he has a noble tale that will repay the knights. It's not even the miller's turn to tell a story, but he interrupts. He's so drunk, and he just starts talking. The host tries to persuade the miller to let some better man tell the next tale. When the miller threatens to leave, however, the host acquiesces. The host gives in and allows it. After the miller reminds everyone that he is drunk and therefore shouldn't be held accountable for anything he says, he introduces his tale as a legend in the life of a carpenter and of his wife, and how a clerk made a fool of the carpenter, which everyone understands to mean the clerk slept with the carpenter's wife. The reeve shouts out his immediate rejection of such ridicule, but the miller insists on proceeding with his tale. The miller announces he's going to tell a story about a carpenter being embarrassed because his wife cheats on him. The reeve takes offense. By this point in the pilgrimage, the miller and the reeve have been going kind of back and forth. They don't really care for each other. And the reeve feels like the miller is about to tell a story that makes fun of him. He points out that, this is the miller, he points out that he's married himself, but doesn't worry whether some other man's sleeping with his wife because it's none of his business. Narrator apologizes to us in advance for the tale's bawdiness. It's a very raunchy story, and warns that those who are easily offended should skip to another tale. The miller begins his story. Some time ago there was, dwelling in Oxford, a rich lout who ran a boarding house. By craft he was a carpenter. Those 2 lines right there, rich lout. Maybe mark those if you're into like kind of annotating. This guy's name is John. He's a carpenter, he's wealthy, and he rents out rooms in his house. He has a boarding house. With him there lived a poor scholar who had studied the arts, but his joy was toward the study of astrology. This student was called Handy Nicholas. Maybe mark that. Nicholas is the young man, the student who lives in their home, rents a room. Of secret love he knew, and of pleasures, and also he was subtle and very private, and like a maiden meek in appearance. A room had he in that boarding house alone without any company. Maybe mark that he's, those 2 lines, he's renting a room in this house. This entire next stanza is important if you're into marking things. Maybe mark that. The carpenter had recently married a woman, which he loved more than his life. 18 years old she was, jealous he was, and he held her narrowly caged, for she was wild and young, and he was old, and feared he might become a cuckold. So John is an older man. He's recently married this young woman. Her name is Allison, by the way. This young woman who's only 18 years old. She's very attractive, but John's very paranoid, very nervous. He's going to cheat on him, embarrass him, make him a cuckold in the town. So he just kind of keeps her at home and whatnot. Just kind of keeps her locked away and not really letting her be out and about. Fair was this young woman, and as graceful as a weasel was her small body. A belt she wore with bars of silk, and also, an apron also as white as morning milk. Her broad headband was of silk and set high, and for a fact she had a lecherous eye. Now, sire, and again, sire, so happened the case that once upon a time this Handy Nicholas started to flirt and play with this young woman while her husband was gone to Asenai. Maybe mark those 3 lines right there, that one day when John is out of town, Nicholas begins to flirt with Allison. Since students are very subtle and very sly, intimately he caught her by the short hair and said, maybe mark the rest of this stanza, I know that if I don't get what I want for secret love of you, lover, I will die. He held her firmly by the thighs and said, "Lover, help me at once, or I will die. God help me." He's very aggressive. He grabs her and tells her he just really, really wants to be with her, or he's going to die if he can't be with her. And she sprang like a colt does in a stall, and turning her head away fast, maybe mark the rest of this stanza. She said, "I will not kiss you by my faith. Why, let me be," said she, "let me be, Nicholas, or I will scream rape. And alas, put away your hands for your honor." So she's like, "Hey, get your hands off of me or I'm going to yell rape." But she doesn't say it in such a threatening way that he thinks necessarily that she's very serious. Then Nicholas began to cry for forgiveness and spoke so beautifully and pressed her so strongly that at last she gave in. Top right-hand side of the page, maybe mark the first 3 lines in that stanza. "And swore by an oath by St. Thomas of Kent that she would do his will when she could find a time to do it. My husband is so jealous that unless we watch well and keep private, I know well I am dead," said she. "We must be very secret in this case." Yes, basically she says she will, she will be with him if he can find a way to keep it a secret from her husband and her husband never finds out. "No, don't worry about that," said Nicholas. "A student would have poorly used his time if he could not fool a carpenter." And thus they agreed and swore to watch for a time, as I have said before. When Nicholas had done these things, stroked her well about the loins, he played her sweetly and took his zither and played fast, making a melody. Then it so happened on a holy day that to the parish clerk to do Christ's own work, this good woman went. Her forehead shone as bright as any day, kind of like mine. So was it washed when she stopped her work. Now there was in that church a parish clerk whose name was Absalom. Maybe mark those last 2 lines that tells you there's a clerk that works at the church. His name is Absalom. This Absalom, so jolly and lively, goes with a censer on the holidays, sensing the women of this parish eagerly. And many a lovely look on them he casts, maybe mark these 2 lines as well, and namely on this carpenter's wife, to look on her he thought was a merry life. She was so proper and sweet and lecherous, I dare to say, if she had been a mouse and he a cat, he would have caught her at once. So basically, what we learn in this part of the story is that Absalom works at the church. He's kind of takes attendance as the people come in and whatnot. He's the censor. And he likes to take note of the attractive young ladies there. One lady in particular that really stuck out to him, is Allison, the carpenter's wife, because she's just very, very attractive. And he wishes that he could, talk to her and whatnot. Spit some game, whatever that means. Maybe mark the entire next stanza down on the bottom right-hand side of the page. "And so it happened on a Saturday, the carpenter was gone to Asene. Handy Nicholas and Allison agreed to this conclusion, that Nicholas should develop a plan that would trick the silly, jealous husband. If the game went correctly, she would sleep in his arms all night, for this was his desire and hers also." It's Nicholas's job to come up with a plan that could really fool the carpenter to where they could sleep together. And right enough, without more words, this Nicholas would wait no longer, but secretly to his room. Maybe mark the entire stanza at the top of the next page. "Both food and drink for a day or 2, and told her to tell her husband if he asked about Nicholas. She didn't know where he was. She had not seen him all day. She believed that he must be ill, for no matter how loud she called, he would not answer for anything." So Nicholas kind of starts his plan. His plan is to go up into his room in this boarding house where he rents this room from John, the carpenter, and he's going to stay in his room all day long. He's going to stay there and not come out for any reason. He's not going to answer the door, and he's just going to completely be kind of cut off from everybody else and not respond. Her job is to act like she doesn't know anything about what's going on. Like, oh, that's very strange that he's locked in his room. This went on all that Saturday, Nicholas staying in his bedroom, eating and sleeping, doing what he wanted, until Sunday when the sun went down. So it was all day Saturday, and it was all day Sunday until the evening time, until nighttime. This silly carpenter marveled greatly at Nicholas and thought what might be ailing him. "Go up," he said unto a servant, "knock at the door and knock with a stone, see what's the matter and tell me straight." John sends a servant up there to knock and really knock hard and try to get Nicholas's attention, see what's going on. The servant went up bravely and stood at the bedroom door crying and knocking like crazy. "What? How? What are you doing, Master Nicholas? But how can you sleep all the long day?" But all was for naught. He heard not a word. A hole he found low on a board, a place where the cat went in and out. And at that hole, he looked in. Maybe mark these last 3 lines of this stanza. And at last he saw a sight. Nicholas sat upright, gaping as if he stared at the new moon. So the servant goes and knocks, and Nicholas doesn't answer. The servant looks through a little hole where the cat goes kind of in and out, and he sees Nicholas, and Nicholas is sitting in the room just like in a trance, just staring up at the sky. And he just doesn't move any at all. And it looks like he is in some sort of, catatonic state. Down the servant went quickly and told his master how Nicholas had looked when he saw him. The carpenter blessed himself and said, "Help us, St. Frieswide. A man little knows what may happen to him." Maybe mark these 4 lines. "This man has fallen from his astronomy into some madness or some agony. I always knew that would happen. Men should not know God's secrets." John assumes that because Nicholas likes to study astronomy and dabble with the stars, that it somehow messed up his mind because, the religious belief men aren't supposed to be, studying astrology is really the term it would be called today. And feels like this is what has happened to Nicholas. He's somehow in a trance because of that. So to the bedroom. So to the bedroom door he began to go. His servant was a strong fellow, and by the hasp he heaved the door. It fell to the floor at once. Maybe mark these 2 lines. Yet Nicholas sat as still as a stone and kept gaping up into the air. The servant's very strong. He rips the door off. Obviously that causes quite a commotion. And even with all that noise and just basically tearing the door down, Nicholas does not move. He just sits and keeps staring up at the stars like he's in some sort of trance. The carpenter thought he was in deep despair and grabbed him strongly by the shoulders and shook him hard and yelled angrily, "What, Nicholas? What? How? What? Look down, awake, and think on Christ's passion." Maybe mark these 3 lines and this act that Nicholas puts on. At last, handy Nicholas began to sigh greatly and said, "Alas, shall all the world be lost soon after now?" So they shake him and shake him and shake him and try to get him to awaken. He does awake, or he pretends to come awake at that point from his trance. And the first thing he says is, the world is fixing to end. Shall the world be lost soon after now? We're all about to die, maybe. The world's ending. The carpenter answered, "What say you? What? Think on God as we do, men who work." Nicholas answered, "Fetch me drink, and then I will speak in private of certain things that concern me and you. I will tell it to none other for sure." The carpenter went down and came again and brought a quart of strong ale. And when each had drank his part, Nicholas shut and locked the door, and he sat down by the carpenter. So Nicholas is going to tell John exactly what vision he's had when he was in that state, and that maybe that God has shown him something. "Now, John," said Nicholas, "I will not lie. I have found in my astrology, as I looked in the bright moon, that on Monday next, at quarter night, shall fall a rain so wild and mad that half so great was never Noah's flood. This world," he said, "in less than an hour shall all be drowned, so hideous will be the shower." Maybe mark those couple of lines right there. In less than an hour, will all be drowned, hideous was the shower. So basically Nicholas says he has had a vision that, God has told him that they're going to be flooded, and it's going to be, twice as bad really as Noah's flood. And obviously if John knows his scripture, the whole promise of the rainbow, if you know anything about the Bible, whether you believe that sort of thing or not, the whole promise of the rainbow was that God would never again destroy the world by flood. But John is very gullible. He's very easy to convince of things, and he doesn't really think about anything like that. He just thinks, "Oh, this is terrible. The world's going to be flooded," and he seems to believe the things that Nicholas is telling him. Thus shall mankind drown and lose its life." The carpenter answered, "Alas, my wife," maybe mark these last 3 lines. "And shall she drown, alas, my Alison?" He almost fell down for the sorrow and said, "Is there no remedy in this case?" John's immediate reaction is that he's scared for his wife. He really, really loves Alison and is concerned for her safety. Is there anything that we can do to save her? "Now, we should go get us a kneading trough or else a tub for each of us. Be sure they be big, so we may swim as in a barge. Put in provisions sufficient for one day. Bah to the rest." Basically, as we get to the end of this part that you're really required to read, you need to read before class on Monday. Nicholas says, "Go get 3 big tubs, and I have a plan to where maybe we could save your wife." In fact, he plans to save Alison and himself and John as well. that right there should do it. I tried to keep it under 15 minutes. We're right at 15 minutes now. I hope that you kind of put forth the effort to read these lines, and hopefully this silly video will help you to know what's going on in the story so that on Monday when we roll, you will be ready. Hope you're having a great weekend. Thanks very much for watching. Okay, bye.